Microsoft Azure Security Technologies Arizona 500 exam updated dumps are the best material for you to study all the related skills. Manage identity and access, secure networking, secure compute, storage, and databases, manage security operations. Share some updated Microsoft Arizona 500 exam questions here. 1. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure web app named One and a virtual machine named VM1. VM1 runs Microsoft SQL Server and is connected to a virtual network named VNet1. App1, VM1, and Vent are in the U.S. Central Azure region. You need to ensure that App1 can connect to VM1. The solution must minimize costs. A NAT gateway integration. B. Azure Front Door. C. Regional Virtual Network integration. D. Gateway required virtual network integration. E. Azure Application Gateway integration. 2. You have an Azure subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You have an Amazon Web Service (AWS) account named AWS1 that is connected to Defender for Cloud. You need to ensure that AWS foundational security best practices. The solution must minimize administrative effort. What should you do in Defender for Cloud? A. Create a new customer assessment. B. Assign a built-in assessment. C. Assign a built-in compliance standard. D. Create a new custom standard. 3. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure Blob Storage account Bulb1. You need to configure attribute-based access control (ABAC) for Blob1. Which attributes can you use in access conditions? A. Blob index tags only. B. Blob index tags and container names only. C. File extensions and container names only. D. Blob index tags, file extensions, and container names. 4. You have an Azure subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You have an Amazon Web Services (AWS) account. You need to ensure that when you deploy a new AWS Elastic Compute Cloud (EC2) instance, the Microsoft Defender for Servers agent installs automatically. What should you configure first? A. The Log Analytics agent. B. The Azure Monitor agent. C. The Native Cloud Connector. D. The Classic Cloud Connector. 5. You have an Azure subscription that uses Azure AD Privileged Identity Management (PIM). A user named User1 is eligible for the Billing Administrator role. You need to ensure that the role can only be used for a maximum of 2 hours. What should you do? A. Create a new access review. B. Edit the role assignment settings. C. Update the end date of the user assignment. D. Edit the role activation settings. 6. Your on-premises network contains a Hyper-V virtual machine named VM1. You need to use Azure Arc to onboard VM1 to Microsoft Defender for Cloud. What should you install first? A. The Azure Monitor agent. B. The Azure Connected Machine agent. C. The Log Analytics agent. D. The Guest Configuration agent. 7. You have an Azure subscription that uses Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You need to use Defender for Cloud to review regulatory compliance with the Azure SIS 1.4.0 standard. The solution must minimize administrative effort. What should you do first? A. Assign an Azure policy. B. Manually add the Azure Sys 1.4.0 standard. C. Disable one of the out-of-the-box standards. D. Add a custom initiative. 8. You have an Azure subscription that contains a storage account named Storage 1 and a virtual machine named VM1. VM1 is connected to a virtual network named VNet1 that contains one subnet and uses Azure DNS. You need to ensure that VM1 connects to Storage 1 by using a private IP address. The solution must minimize administrative effort. What should you do? A. For Storage 1, disable public network access. B. Create an Azure private DNS zone. C. On VNet1, create a new subnet. D. For Storage 1, create a new private endpoint. 9. You have an Azure subscription. You create a new virtual network named VNet1. You plan to deploy an Azure web app named App1 that will use VNet1 and will be reachable by using private IP addresses. The solution must support inbound and outbound network traffic. What should you do? A. Create an Azure App Service hybrid connection. B. Configure regional virtual network integration. C. Create an app service environment. D. Create an Azure Application Gateway. 10. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 account named Storage 1. You deploy an Azure Synapse Analytics workspace named Synapse OS1 to a managed virtual network. You need to enable access from Synapse OS1 to Storage 1. What should you configure? A. A virtual network gateway. B. A network security group, NSG. C. A private endpoint. D. Peering.